This is your economic review. My name is Simba. Elijah Charles Kiyage, President Uhuru Kenyatta, ordered Friday through an executive order number 3 of 2021 for investigations into the activities of all the directors of the Kenya Tea Development Agency, KTDA. The President directed the Attorney General, Kihara Kariuki, quote, to conduct an inquiry into the alleged statutory and regulatory compliance breaches allegedly committed by KTDA and its directors. And quote, according to the President, the probe should include investigations into potential price and auction manipulation, abuse of dominance, insider trading, wastefulness, and breach of directors' fiduciary duties. Attempts to revitalize the tea sector have been met with resistance from KTDA and the East African Tea Traders Association, EATA, which has moved to court to stop key sections of the new tea laws from being implemented. This morning, to help us go through some of the bigger headlines that you're waking up to this morning, we're joined by Joash Onsando, public policy analyst and political strategist. Joash, good morning, sir.
Good morning to you. Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you around. We are joined by Chacha Bichanga, personal finance coach and economic analyst. How are you doing, Mr. Chacha?
I'm doing fine. How about you, Simba?
Fantastic to have you around. Finally, Reginald Kadzitsu, who is also an around economic analyst. How are you doing, Reginald?
Morning, Simba.
Happy to have you around, sir. All right, let me start with you, Josh.
Yes.
This position of KTDA, I mean, what position do they find themselves in right now within this executive order to investigate its directors?
I think the position KTDA finds itself in is not an enviable position. They seem to have serious issues with the Tea Act 2020,
yes,
which was essentially supposed to bring in reforms into the tea sector, particularly in favor of the smallholder farmers. In response to that, they went to court alongside the IATA, as you mentioned, and had 14 sections of that law suspended via court order. I think what the president is trying to do is to try and circumvent that long, arduous judicial process in trying to finally put permanent reforms in the tea sector in favor of the smallholder tea farmer. And so I think by issuing an executive order, he's just trying to circumvent all these court orders and everything, and is bringing the battle to KTDA's door. Because if you're going to fight these reforms,
yes,
then we are going to investigate you. And it's important for me to mention at this point that the issues with KTDA both cascade down to the factory level and propagate up to the national level. So you have poorly run factories by directors who are not particularly accountable to the smallholder tea farmer. For example, you don't have term limits on directors and chairmen of factories and so on and so forth. We've had a KTDA management board that has been in existence for the better part of, if not more than 15 years. And so I think what they're fighting through these court orders is the need to be accountable to the tea farmer. And I'll give you an example where you have a similar body in Yingzhou, China, where in a similar period last year, their total sales from earnings from tea was about 700 billion Kenya shillings. In Kenya, we are talking about 155 billion. Now, even if you factor in the value addition challenges between Kenya and China, or differences, you still have an issue. I think there are issues of efficiency, there are issues of pilferage, and there are issues of accountability at KTDA that need to be looked at.
yes. Josh, just before I let you go, though, can we understand the relevance, or I would say the relevance, yes, of an executive order? When people read it and say, well, it's an executive order, what calls for an executive order? What are we reading into that? Are things that bad?
I think what Uhuru has realized, what the president has realized, is that in trying to reform this sector,
yes,
that because Kenya is increasingly becoming a very judicious country, and so anytime you do something, someone will run to court and get a court order, and so he's trying to circumvent that process and to avoid that process altogether through this probe. I am particularly interested about the nature of the probe, the technical nature of the probe, because you can't probe KTDA for example, he's ordered the AG to look into KTDA. I would really hope that there'll be industry insiders who will be part of the probe, particularly people who have been in tea sector for a while, and particularly in the private sector, because the private sector in tea in Kenya doesn't have the kind of issues we see in KTDA. I don't know whether the executive order is the right move, but I think it's the only move available to the government at this point in time.
Pretty much. All right, let me bring in a Chacha this morning as well. I mean, Chacha, from where you're standing this morning, and I will ask you this question. Does the government wish KTDA away in the new tea laws? Is that what it is now?
Okay, thank you, Simba. As my colleague on Sanders put it, that the tea sector in the country has been in a total mess.
Yes.
As we have had a management board that has been there for many years. What that means, the small-scale tea farmers indeed are suffering, and you can see that from the huge disparities of the prices paid per kilo. You will find in some parts of the country where maybe they say the quality is a bit low, a farmer getting 15 shillings per kilo.
Yes.
In some parts, for example, in the Mount Kenya region, where the quality is said to be slightly higher, farmers are being paid 45 shillings per kilo, up from 30 shillings. And in fact, what this means, the small-scale tea farmers are feeling the effect. And in fact, some farmers are even uprooting the tea because they're not seeing the impact. When you compare that to what they were earning in the 80s and partly at the 90s, the tea bonuses were much higher compared to what we have nowadays. And in fact, because of the cartels, we have cartels in the tea sector who have actually ended up exploiting the farmer. We have cartels right from the tea buying center to the tea factories. The factories are somewhat semi-autonomous, and they are under the management of KTDA,
yes,
up to where actually the auctioning is done. So these cartels have made the lives of the small-scale farmers miserable. And as that, the president, through his executive order, is trying to introduce sanity into a sector which was one of the highest foreign exchange earners for quite a number of years. But if the trend continues, we are going to see foreign exchange earning from tea going down because farmers are their disappointment. So the president, as he tries to circumvent the court process whereby KTDA and the IATA, as you have said, have filed a suit challenging some of the reforms of the Tea Act 2020, the president here has instituted an investigation into the conduct of the operations of the KTDA and some of the directors. And remember, directors are supposed to champion the interest and the welfare of the small-scale farmers. But are they doing that? No. They are in cahoots with the managers of KTDA, and they are fleecing. They are actually robbing and exploiting the farmers. So we hope there will be some sanity through the presidential order. If some directors and the managers are found culpable to have abused office, they can be taken to court or they can be suspended, okay? So that we can have a management that is revitalized, re-energized, and that is responsive to the needs of the farmer, small-scale farmer, who in this case does not see any hope in the tea sector. Thank you.
Pretty much. Reginald, let me bring you in as well. I mean, well, this was touted as the change, the game change. I'm talking about what's supposed to be the Tea Act of 2020. It was touted as the game changer, and the president said that we have to give the small-scale farmer or the farmer a saying in the prices of tea across the country in terms of what they get into the pocket. They were drafted by the Ministry of Agriculture with the relevant stakeholders, and they went through the normal process of even public participation. And it looks as if, well, the farmers had their way. They said, this looks good. But KTDA and the IATA went to court to stop implementation of some sections of that Tea Act of 2020. Reginald, the point is going to be, can we operate without KTDA? Is that what the government is wishing for?
No, not really. I think the government is just trying to make sure that the small-scale farmer benefits.
Yes.
KTDA's role as the main tea marketer and just controlling that whole is actually supposed to benefit the small-scale farmer. But unfortunately, along the way, corruption, pilferage, loss of vision, overstaying kind of clouds some of those things. However, the main issue that we'll also have to look at was you can try and sort out some of these operational challenges. But one, there's an issue of land management that Kenya needs to deal with. As much as small-scale farmers are good, you realize one, small-scale farming stifles innovation and economies of scale and efficiency. And that's why you'll end up, if you, Simba, have 30 acres or 30 acres or 20 acres, you're most probably doing tea on 15 acres. The other, whatever you've built your house, you're keeping your cows, you're keeping your chicken. So even productivity of small-scale farmers is normally lower than for commercial farmers. So it's something that needs to be looked at to the benefit of the farmer. The more they come together
Yes.
and become semi-commercial, their returns increase, and their costs pretty much remain the same or even come down a bit. Then secondly, as the economies continue to open up and grow, my worry is that the price of tea has been going up because of reduced supply globally. But if supply starts coming in from the other sectors, other countries, your Sri Lankas and all those other guys who do tea, prices will come down, but our quantity has not been increasing. And if you look historically over time, our quantity has either been stagnant or actually reducing, which is the worry. Secondly, also not going into other varieties. Again, this is where you need economists in places like KTDA or even in some of these factories to realize what is the demand for black tea globally vis-a-vis the upcoming demand for other variants of tea. If you look here in Kenya itself, yes, people still drink black tea, but the middle class in quotes and the affluent people are moving away from black tea. And it's a trend that you see globally because of some of the health benefits of herbal teas and stuff like that. So even if we sort out the operational issues and we do not sort out the element of innovation in terms of the variety of teas that we produce, we're just fixing a dinosaur, putting bandage here and there, but just dragging along an eventual death where tea becomes like coffee, where people say it's better to put an apartment here because the return I'm getting from this plant doesn't make sense.
Yes. Josh, even as we talk about this, there's a feeling that generally the conversation is about how KTDA and the likes of Kenyatta do not want the government to come in and control the price. Case in point, the government wants 50% of the earnings of the farmers paid up front, and then the next 50% paid as a bonus to the farmers before the end of that 1 year. Case in point, that in 1 year, all the farmers should get what they deserve. And also now, KTDA and the likes of Kenyatta not acting as middlemen in terms of the selling of tea within the country. That is very contagious. Price control. Do you think that they have a point in telling the government, well, you can't control the price of tea. We can price it for the benefit of the farmer, as opposed to you saying, well, take out the middleman, who in this case is KTDA and any broker that may want to work within KTDA?
I think that would be a fair argument if the process through which KTDA sets prices was transparent.
Yes.
I think the problem is the lack of transparency in the pricing of tea. So you have a body that is extremely powerful that sets prices together with ER.
Well, I seem to have lost Josh there momentarily. Chacha, if you can get me, let's take that question from your end. Chacha, price control. Do you think that KTDA and IATA have a point when they say, well, you as the government, you can't actually determine how we price our teas, because sometimes we price it for the benefit of the farmer. Case in point as well, Chacha, this morning, we do have news that any farmer who belongs to the Mount Kenya region, and in this case we're talking about Embu, Mwanga, let me just go back to that list, Meru and Kirinyaga counties, as opposed to receiving 16 shillings per kilo, KTDA has decided they're going to receive 21 shillings per kilo. So do they have a point in saying, well, you can't control the price for us, let the price factors play out? Well, we seem to have a technical difficulty on that, and I don't know whether it's important for us to take a little break and then wait for our panelists to come back this morning. We apologize for that short technical hitch. Let's try and fix it this morning.